Extraction shooters, battle royales, virtual reality, the rise of free-to-play. The shooter genre has been expanding for years, and gamers and publishers alike are always wondering where its future will go. But put your mind for a second back into the year 2015. Star Wars Battlefront, Rainbow Six Siege, and Black Ops 3 had just released. Silent Hills was cancelled. AAA industry executives were going all in on cloud gaming, and no one had as much as uttered the term Battle Pass. In the next 10 years, shooter games are going to change forever. But in order to understand where they might be going, there's a lot that we can learn from where they've already been. So, I was playing Fortnite recently, roast me if you want, and I'm no pro gamer, but I was using the Bolt, and it got me thinking. Ballistic mechanics. You know, bullets that have weight, travel time, leading your shots. When did that become a normal thing? When I was coming up, that was like hardcore military simulation level stuff, not what you'd expect to see in one of the most popular, widely played mainstream shooter games on Earth. We always overestimate how much things will change in the next couple of years and underestimate how much they'll change in the next 10. Turn around, and suddenly the games that you play have fundamentally changed in huge, sweeping ways that always start from something little. On December 3rd, 2014, Arma Mater Player Unknown made a post on Reddit announcing his involvement with bringing the popular Arma Battle Royale mode to the soon-to-launch game H1Z1. He was changing the world, although he probably didn't realize it at the time, and in that thread, the team also discussed their plan to charge players $1 a ticket for every drop into the arena. As in, to play the Battle Royale, you'd have to pay $1 every round. Player Unknown and the H1Z1 team had a mechanic they knew was a hit, but how to sustain it effectively, how to monetize it, there was no rulebook. Which is exactly what is happening with the trends that we're seeing in gaming today: uncertainty. Battle Royale's spiritual successor, the extraction shooter, the hot-button topic of today, publishers are still trying to leverage its seeming potential for success against its inherent complexity. And whether we ever see its most perfect version, the genre is already evolving outside its roots, and I doubt that we're going to be seeing any more iterations on that Tarkov-esque modern military looter extraction PvP-style game by as soon as 2030. The grounded modern military aesthetic has been hot for a few years now, by the way, as well. It responds to the oversaturation of sci-fi and near-future aesthetics of the 2010s. The indie shooter scene has been focused on scratching that itch for quite a while now with games like Ground Branch, 6 Days in Fallujah, Squad, and Tarkov, of course. And these collective tastes always swing back around, which means that by the mid-2030s, we're going to be very sick of that tactical, quad-nod, face-shielded, modded M4 look that's so popular right now. Just like players yearned for a more modern, realistic take after years of World War II-themed shooters in the 2000s. But even the idea of realism in general, it might be going out of style. As a result of the massive growth of the home PC market over the last 10 years, there's been increased focus by devs on pushing graphic fidelity, on realism. But it's become oversaturated as well, and it's losing a bit of its luster, no pun intended. And with the successes of games like Fortnite, Marvel Rivals, and Valorant, we're going to see many more developers opt for a smoother, simpler, more timelessly stylized visual design for shooter games in the coming years. But indie developers are always going to be the ones pushing the envelope, trying new things, a trend that we saw rise in the last couple years, which will absolutely continue. Not by doing what the big dogs do better, rather by doing everything that they can't or won't do. If there's one thing industry professionals predicted correctly about the 2020s, it was the democratization of games development. Game engines are free to use and experiment with. Assets can be downloaded for free and studied or used outright, and learning coding or programming is no longer something relegated to college classrooms. Making something complex and opaque like coding into a game itself is exactly what you see in something like Boot.dev, who are the sponsor of today's video. Now, full disclosure for this sponsorship, Boot.dev wanted me to complete some lessons for maybe a half hour or so to get a feel for how their system worked firsthand. It essentially makes learning coding into an interactive gamified experience through power-ups, XP streaks, and community events. And, well, an hour and a half later, I can honestly say that I'm actually fully inspired and wanting to learn more for maybe the first time in my life. See, I've always found programming to be an utterly overwhelming and honestly boring subject, but one that I wished I knew more about, especially because of things like the in-game Unix shells in the upcoming game Beautiful Light, which I have talked about recently on the channel. So I jumped into the Linux course. It started me off with some simple, easy to understand basics of terminology, and before I knew it, I was not only solving simple problems, I actually understood for the first time what I was doing on a command line. Boot.dev gives you points for progressing. There's a global leaderboard where you can see all the other people learning, etc. But the coolest aspect, in my opinion, is that all of this gamification is based on the realities of a real-world programming job. This site isn't some get-rich-quick scheme. This is all about teaching you real coding applications and problem solving and giving you all the tools and resources you need to figure it out yourself in this ever-changing world of back-end development. So if you want to start your journey in web development, head to boot.dev and use my code, Rilo, on screen right now for 25% off your entire first year if you go with an annual plan. So click that link in the description and use my code to get started. And speaking of a changing world, back to the video. So while indie leads the charge, changing the very way we understand what a shooter game can be, this only happens because of an inherent push and pull between mainstream and niche culture. So what will the AAAs be doing? Well, we're in somewhat of a bear market right now. Most AAA game studios are at all times about 2 dev cycles away from shuttering or massive layoffs. And that means that big publishers are going to want to play it safe, meaning more remakes, more nostalgia baiting, more consolidation. A shooter space overwhelmingly composed of a tonal return to form in this next decade, an interest in recognizability and simplicity. And this isn't actually inherently a bad thing. Single-player and co-op experiences are going to make a bit of a comeback. Publishers, I think, have finally begun to see their potential from community sentiment standpoint, and the failure of the forced multiplayer live service model into places it simply does not belong has finally begun to get through some thick corporate skulls, hopefully at least. As far as competitive games go, we will likely see 1 or 2 new massive hits in the next decade, a Valorant or PUBG, likely one successful new game type that we haven't seen before, and another which nails a slight twist on a beloved mode. But the risk against going up against these decades-established titans increases year upon year, not just because of oversaturation, but because of, you guessed it, cheating. A topic done to death, so I'm going to try to keep it simple here. Cheating is really bad, and it's here to stay. You need to understand, this is an actual industry in and of itself, in a direct war with game developers. Cheating is a business, it's profitable, and as long as that remains the case, it'll get worse and worse with the increasing popularity of PC gaming alongside better and harder to detect cheats. Developers will have to make anti-cheat not just a tacked-on addition, but part of their dev process in the coming decade, whether through dedicated security teams or by making games which inherently aren't competitive. See, people care when others are cheating when they feel the cheating affects them. No one's putting effort into developing cheats for non-competitive shooters, and if they are, no one cares. Which brings us to one of the most interesting and most contentious subjects of the video, AI. The development of AI-supported anti-cheat has already been talked about a lot, but like I've said before, the cheat devs have the same tools, and with a business incentive behind it, the war between the bots will only rage on worse and worse. But think for a second here. Why is cheating a problem? What is the catalyst? It's people. NPCs don't cheat themselves. Okay, well, maybe this guy does, but really, cheating is a human problem. So what if we removed them? So before you send the Helldivers after me, I'm serious. Imagine a PvP shooter game that's, well, not PvP, but PvE, player versus environment, or player versus AI. That's as engaging, as dynamic, complex, and rewarding as playing against real human opponents. Extremely dynamic, realistic AI foes can already be found in many mods for milsim games, like the Sane mod for single-player Tarkov. But AI enemy teams which worked together, which communicated, AI players that could play ranked competitive matches, where they could learn, could improve, get better at the game, where they could be fooled, make mistakes, where they could be trolled in a realistic, interesting, and evolving way. Now, imagine if you could fight against AI like this with friends, could manage their parameters, could create matches, ranked tournaments, servers with the kind of enemy players you want to feel challenged by to fight and beat. The best part of PvP without all of the toxicity, without the cheating. If games in the future offered online normal human versus human PvP, but also this new player versus AI type experience, it could be the perfect remedy for those who love PvP but hate what PvP comes with, but also people who want more than what a co-op or PvE game usually offers, that unpredictability. I think I die here. I die here. On second thought, human interaction really can never be beat, can it? It's just too diverse, too unique. And while I came up with this idea as a hopefully creative alternative to the slow slopification of concept art, voice acting, and storytelling that I have a feeling the AAA industry will actually use AI for, I don't think that human interaction online will wane in the coming years. Quite the opposite. Online gaming, especially shooter games, isn't just about how other humans move or shoot. It's about being able to talk to them, get to know them, especially those who live across the world, who have different ideas and ways of thinking than you. Think about for a second how much faster the average internet connection is today than it was in 2015. How many more people have high-speed connections? It's possible that the world will somehow become an even more connected place by 2035 than it is now. Multiplayer will be snappier, less laggy, region locking could even be a thing of the past. And as the world gets more connected, as gaming becomes more connected in general, it'll become more and more universalized. It's very possible that in a few years you could be playing a Microsoft-published online competitive Halo match via your Steam account on your portable handheld PlayStation console while on the train on the way to work or school, while you're talking to your buddy in Africa or China on Discord, or whatever Discord gets replaced by. And yeah, I know that this sounds a bit like a quote you'd see from a CEO in Wired magazine, but I mean it. Exclusivity is a thing of the past. Proprietary distribution platforms are a thing of the past. And consoles themselves honestly might be too, if the major manufacturers don't really key in to what the target audience of the 2020s to 2030s really want from them. Because guess what as well? Hate to burst all of our bubbles here, that target audience might not be us for much longer. The biggest, most interesting change that we're going to see in the gaming industry in the coming decade is so obvious, but it's still surprising in a actually sort of unprecedented way. See, gaming as we know it has only been around for about 40 years, less so if we're talking about shooter games. The bulk of game sales is coming from people in their late 20s to 40s right now. The gamers with actual spending power, the ones who are driving the market, it's millennials and young Gen Xers, the ones who grew up on Sega Genesis, Atari, SNES. And they're not only the ones spending the most on games, they're the ones making them. But that generation, they no longer make up the bulk of people who play games. Today, that's people from 18 to 34 years old. Close to 40% of gamers are in this age bracket. People born in the 90s to 2000s, the era where we saw a turning point of gaming and the internet from an utterly niche thing for kids and nerds to something marketable to the mainstream. But in 10 years, the group who will make up the current bulk of gamers will be in their mid to late 30s and 40s, as in what should be their most financially stable and ready to spend. And the Gen Alpha kids and young Gen Z, the first generation of people to have been born into a world where gaming is mainstream already, where internet culture is pervasive. They will be the largest demographic group of gamers in the world. What does this mean? It means that we are going to be entering a world where people who grew up on Fortnite and Warzone are in their early 20s and ready to control the market with their wallets, where the kids who grew up playing Black Ops Zombies and Arma 2 DayZ mod are running game studios, not just interning at them. Where the idea of a battle pass feels as ancient as playing a demo disc off of a PC Mag from the bookstore. What does this mean? I'm not gonna lie, I have absolutely no idea. The soul of a given decade often doesn't take hold until about halfway through. 2002 was pretty much the 90s, but by 2008, we had the iPhone. And this goes tenfold for this decade. Financially, culturally, stylistically, being stuck at home for the first years of the 2020s did irreversible things to our tastes and ideas, which define how we'll remember this decade a decade from now. It's why we're talking about the next 10 years now rather than at the start of the decade, and it's why, despite making this video, I really can't predict what will come, and neither will the suits upstairs trying to create the next big hit for kids to spend money on. Even once a trend establishes itself, it takes years to figure out what it really meant. For every fortnight, there are 10 forgotten titles which tried to ride its wave. Isles of Nine, Radical Heights, Firestorm, Blackout, Rings of Elysium, Realm Royale, Darwin Project, Hyperscape, even H1Z1. Oh yeah, the ones who come up with the killer idea rarely get to profit the most off of it. And that's not a risk that game companies are going to want to take anymore when they can help it. And they may not actually have to. In the next 10 years, we're going to see two major things. Mainstream shooters are going to become less identifiable, less unique. They're going to be simpler at their cores. And following in the footsteps laid by Halo's server browser game types in the 2000s, Gary's mod servers and the like, game companies are going to go all in on community development. Rather than bi-yearly releases trying to nail this impossible halfway between the zeitgeist of the moment and not alienating your core audience, I believe a small number of established names will own the majority of the market, essentially outsourcing their creativity, their niche appeal to the masses through their own proprietary games as a platform. Essentially, publishers don't have to find the next big hit when the community as a whole will find it for them. But this isn't necessarily a bad thing. On this channel, I often highlight the strange ones, those niche titles that hit hard and deep with specific intrigue that likely will never have mainstream appeal, because that's my taste. I want to share it with others who feel the same, and by God, I'm going to continue to do so. But that doesn't mean that games with mainstream appeal are bad or soulless. Remember, I play friggin' Fortnite too. When asked about the future of games in 2010, Yoshinori Ono, producer at Capcom on the Street Fighter series, said, "We mustn't forget that games are for fun. Games should never be necessity, but pure entertainment. I hope all games developers will do their best to exalt games into a spice that increases the quality of life." And I hope that going into the next 10 years, we never forget that. Because we all want slightly different things. We all experience fun in slightly different ways. The future of shooter games might be innovative, boundary-pushing, and unrecognizable. It might be flat, simple, accessible, and homogeneous. Or, far more likely, it'll be a combination of the two. Sometimes we want to be surprised. We want mechanics which we never imagined, immersion we've never experienced, or control schemes that we never thought possible. And sometimes, we just want to hop onto Team Deathmatch and click some heads. I'm hoping for all of the above. I'm Rilo, and I like to talk about stuff that I think is cool or interesting. Subscribe for more like this, and I will catch you very soon.